The first neurologist we went to, I think, just didn't want to say the words. I think that's a really hard thing to tell people for a lot of neurologists. So he actually sat us at his desk, and he had a printer on his desk, and he started printing out information about neurological disorders and told us to go home and read it. And like, we've read that. We knew what we were dealing with. We knew what the tests were representing. And so we got handed to an ALS neurologist who came in, looked at all our paperwork, and very quickly said, "Yep, I'm sorry, you have the worst disease known to man today. You're probably going to live about 2 years. Go get your affairs in order." And he literally stood up from behind his desk and walked out of the room. And we sat there by ourselves to figure out. And eventually Jeff left the room, and I didn't know. I didn't know if I was supposed to leave. I didn't know if somebody was going to come talk to me. And the nurse came in and handed me the card of the ALS Association and told us to call them. So it was a very lonely process for me to walk. I remember walking out of that doctor's office and going down in the elevator, trying to process, holding this card in my hand that was going to give us the answers that we needed, and having to face Jeff at the bottom of the elevator. And it was just, part of the tragedy is how that whole diagnosis happens for people. I'm sure there's never a good way, but there are definitely worse ways. Probably a couple of years ago, I would have said, be human. Don't be a scientist. Be a human being. You're telling a whole family that their life is about to be destroyed. But now I would say that isn't the case at all. I have a very different perspective because I work with so many neurologists now that I think, how do they do that every day? For 20 years, how do they come in every day knowing that they can't save the lives of the people that they're treating, or that they're going to have to tell people? Like, I remember walking through the ALS Center after Jeff passed away and looking at the people who were there waiting for a diagnosis, and you know what the trajectory of that is. So how do these doctors do it, and why? They choose to be in this field. We didn't choose to be in it. They chose to be in it. So now I think it's a really unique experience for neurologists and for patients. And I think the key is finding that good partnership, the right doctor with the right patients. And it's never going to be easy, but it can definitely be softer. I also know, having been around a lot of neurologists, and for myself, having stayed in the ALS community, that it is possible to kind of get numb to what you deal with. And that's the truth, that every once in a while I talk to a person on the journey and something they say strikes something in me, and I remember that feeling and how it felt to be in that moment, and puts my perspective back in place. But for neurologists, they don't necessarily have that perspective, right? Because they probably haven't been given that diagnosis themselves. So it's difficult to expect people to understand that. So I wouldn't necessarily give people advice or give neurologists advice as much as I might give patients and caregivers advice to you're going through the worst moments in your life, but the person on the other side of the table has no way of comprehending what you're feeling, so be patient.